Yeah, there we go. This is an interview I've wanted to do for quite some time. Nathan Livingstone, I've been following your work on X, and it's funny because you're on the other side of the world. I don't know if you're upside down, but you're certainly on the other side of the world. And we've been coming at the same story from different angles, talking about Andrew Tate, the brothers Tate, Tristan Tate. You have been quite methodical because you have been looking at the charges. Sometimes we hear, oh, there are no charges. It's very, very confusing when you're looking at it. And I was so happy to see your work and to see how methodical it is and to see that you are working on facts. You are pulling up videos and you're saying, this is what he said, judge a man on what he says and believe him. So great to have you on board today. Will you tell us, first of all, about being sued by Andrew Tate? What is going on there?
Yeah, so this is pretty new. It just happened in the past few weeks. This isn't anything new to Andrew Tate, though. This kind of technique of using lawfare as a way to silence his critics and people that are speaking out, including alleged victims. He's been open about it. There's even one clip that I uploaded after the lawsuit where he's talking about someone he was beefing online with, and he straight up is bragging about doxing that person and saying he doesn't care about winning or losing. He just cares about dragging this person through the painful process of a lawsuit. So for him, it's the process of the punishment, and it's his way to intimidate and silence people.
Yeah, and as you say, he puts this all out on social media for everybody to see if they're paying attention. A lot of people not paying attention out there. And I actually have to say, initially, I was probably one of those people because he was saying things I agree with. And then you're kind of, initially when you're looking on at Andrew Tate, it's like, oh, well, maybe he's good for young men because he's muscly and he's telling them to keep fit and he's telling them to, defend their borders and all those kind of things. And until you actually witness, one of your montages, which is saying, no, look at this. You have to. This is what he's really about.
I'd have sex with women to get their money. Yeah. I didn't want to have sex with them. I was trying to get the money.
How do I use these women to make money? Jesus.
Right.
You cannot get a girl to work for you haven't fucked. So the recruitment process is the same as the PhD course.
PhD is a pimp and hose degree that I'm.
Clever.
And
Clever.
That teaches basically how I got girls, how I met girls, how I got girls to like me, how I got girls to fall in love with me to work on webcam for me.
And I would say he's using, say, the truth movement or certain truths as a shield for his vice world. What do you say to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think maybe similar to you, where I felt there was government overreach in the response to the pandemic. I was in Melbourne, so we had the longest lockdowns in the world. And I even lost my job to vaccine mandates because I just decided I take a stand after those really, really long, grueling and painful lockdowns. I decided, I was enough of that government intervention in our lives. And I weighed up the risks and benefits for myself and decided, as a young person who's pretty healthy, I didn't think that COVID was a risk to me. So I decided I wasn't going to get the jab, and I lost my job as a forklift driver because of that. That's how I started making videos and started my social media account. And yeah, there was this Andrew Tate character who people seemed to embrace that flowed in the same circles as me. They felt like he was standing up for the same things that they were, so they decided they'd embrace him. Except the more I looked into him, the more I found it pretty disturbing what there was. And it was particularly seeing his interviews with Piers Morgan and Tucker Carlson that I was troubled by the fact that there was always this narrative around Andrew Tate in these interviews about how he's a misogynist, and he says these things that are troubling around women and men possessing women and what that means. And it always kind of did my head in that no one seemed to actually pull him up on the fact that he was a literal pimp. He actually spoke and admitted to being a pimp. So I'm like, well, I don't really care that he's saying these things on podcasts. You know, I care what he actually did. And it seemed that he was a literal pimp who spoke about, you know, exploiting women and taking advantage of them and building an empire off that. And why don't they talk about that?
For me. Because that's what I did. That was my MO, was find girls, make them love me, and make them work for me. And that's how I got rich.
I created a system that allowed me to convince girls to do this, allowed me to retain 100% control of their income. I know how to make sure the girl can't run away. If she has like a really strong social circle and she really insists on seeing them, they're going to have a big influence over her. And it's in your best interest to get her away from that social circle. All these things tie into isolating her and taking her away from the outside influences. Every outside influence is training. All of them. How can she leave you if you start making loads of money and the girl thinks, well, I want to leave and do this by myself, but you have the Twitter, you have the Instagram, you have the account on your phone, she can't do nothing.
Self-incriminating as usual, and seems to be getting away with it. So you do have these, you know, legions of young men who have bought into it because they see the cars, they see the women, and there is a knock-on effect. And we see now they've got this adolescence thing going on Netflix. We know it's propaganda, but this guy ties in perfectly with it all because he is actually having an effect, and he is tarnishing the message. He's smearing the whole thing. You know, his dad was the CIA, well, worked with the CIA. I'm not quite sure in what capacity. But you'd really have to wonder, why is he getting so much publicity? Why is he being put out front and center?
Yeah, the CIA thing's that's a load of crap. That's something he says. Yeah, it's not true at all. His dad is the last is like the worst kind of person that they'd last kind of person they'd recruit. You know, he was abusive alcoholic with no self-restraint. But he, like as always, he likes to pump up these things. But yeah, I mean, Andrew Tate's it is interesting, the phenomena of Andrew Tate, and why it is that he's so popular. And there's so many different areas to approach that. You can approach that from his PR and marketing, which I think is where his genius actually lies. But you can also talk to what is it culturally somehow that he's able to appeal to men at this time and to take advantage of that. Yeah, it's quite interesting because I think you saw this thing of Jordan Peterson, and he was someone that connected with young white males, especially, and he was able to kind of plug into this audience that no one was really speaking to, and he was able to say, society is telling you that masculinity is toxic, and being white is wrong, and that there's a patriarchy that's been beating down women for too long. So it's this thing of like, you need to kind of take a seat now. You've had your time. And Jordan Peterson was one of the first people to kind of actually say, it's like, well, no, you have meaning, and you should try and pursue the best version of yourself. And he used a combination of psychology and philosophy and all sorts of things to really kind of inspire and to like touch a generation of young men that I think were struggling to find meaning. And then what happened was, in the COVID years, Jordan Peterson became sick because he had this whole benzo thing, so he kind of pulled away.
He kept crying. He was just crying for no reason.
Yeah, he had, for whatever reason, he had to leave, and it left a vacuum. And it seemed that Andrew Tate stepped in and filled that vacuum. Now the difference between Andrew Tate and Jordan Peterson is massive. People group them in together, but in many ways they couldn't be further apart, because Jordan Peterson is all about that idea of You should clean your room and find worth, so then you can contribute to society, and actually give back, and hopefully you can eventually become a leader in your community. Whereas Andrew Tate, it's the complete opposite. It's entirely driven about me, and power.
Your goal is to inspire a girl to make money and give you the money. So the way you're going to do that is you have to have some element of influence, and her believing she needs you. And this is extremely important, because at the beginning she will need you, but then she won't need you. But you have to keep that fallacy, keep that dream alive that she can't do this without you.
And everything that comes with it, and to destroy anyone that stands in your way. And I mean, those two messages couldn't be further apart. Jordan Peterson always says it's the same critique of the left and with communism, where everything's framed from a hierarchy of power. And Andrew Tate's the same thing. In all of his courses, it's really interesting. He has courses on everything. He has courses on, webcamming, but also networking as well. So how you can be a successful networker. It was one of those things where, courses was like a get rich type thing. But nowhere in anything that he ever teaches will you ever say that a reason that you should do something is because it's the right thing to do. You will never find that, because that's just not how he thinks. Everything he does is driven by profit and what he will gain from it.
Well, he seems to be openly evil, openly. But I find, okay, we have this villain character who's been presented to us, who gets all the publicity. He's put in center and front. And as you say, he's interviewed by the Tucker Carlsons. He's interviewed by Candace Owens. He's put in our faces. But the issue for me is it is all a reflection of people's very low moral setting, because so many people are just making excuses for him, saying, well, as long as he's saying some things we agree with, sure, it doesn't really matter. And you'd have to go, well, that's absolute nonsense. Of course, a con man is going to say some things, because he uses the lover boy method, doesn't he? So the lover boy method is going to whisper sweet nothings into your ear, get you hooked, and then start abusing you. I mean, that he's been very open about that. Now, very strangely, he's going into politics. I mean, it's very hard to believe any of it. We have got Conor McGregor over here saying he wants to be the president, and he seems to be quite serious about it. Now, the problem is, when we look at, say, McGregor and we look at Andrew Tate, they have links to Donald Trump. And this is where it becomes serious. And the fact that they have all these millions of people who are cheering them on. And then you go, okay, we're going to have to take this nonsense, and it is nonsense, but we're going to have to take it seriously and address it properly. There's so few of us doing it. But if we look at what happened with the Romanian case, with the Tate brothers, and the Trump administration intervening in that case and getting the Tates out on a private jet, I mean, the message that sends out, private jet back to the States, where Andrew Tate is facing further allegations. So, I mean, nothing was stopping him. The guy thinks he's untouchable. I'd just love to get your response to the Trump administration interfering in that Romanian case.
Yeah, it was one of those really strange things where it's, was it like 2 months ago, Andrew Tate was still under house arrest for the charge of sex with a minor. And we should make it clear that no charges have been dropped, no cases have been dropped. They lie about that, but all the charges remain and the cases are still open. So, for since they were arrested in December 2022, they haven't been allowed to leave Romania. They've been under various judicial controls. So that's ranged from under house arrest to being able to travel around the county, to then being able to travel around Romania. But Andrew Tate has been under house arrest for a significant amount of that time since December 2022. And then we saw with the Trump administration, weeks after they came into power, there was reports that someone from the administration was pressing on Romania and wanting to discuss the Tate's case, and then it was, I think, the week after that they were then allowed to fly exclusively to America. They still weren't allowed to travel anywhere else. They weren't allowed to travel to Europe. It was only to America. The more we saw about it, the more it became clear what happened. And some people outright said what happened. Roger Stone, who's in the Trump camp, came out and actually posted on X saying thank you to Rick Grenell, the special envoy for the Trump administration, for getting him out. And then he ended up deleting that post. It's been very interesting, because Donald Trump was asked about it. He was asked about it when they arrived, or when they were about to arrive in Florida. And he said, I don't know anything about this. I'll look into this and I'll get back to you. And just recently, Rick Grenell berated someone because a letter was sent asking about his involvement in getting the Tates out. So it's this very interesting thing where it's, I don't know what it is, whether you have these players within the Trump administration that are making moves behind Trump and others' backs. It appears like, everyone's not on the same page, because then we just found out that there's actually a federal investigation into the Tate brothers by the DOJ. MAGA might say that that's somehow 4D chess. And Rick Grenell was trying to get them there to then be able to arrest them. It doesn't appear that way. Rick Grenell seems to be a fan. He was retweeting Andrew Tate continually while he was there. So yeah, it's very interesting. You've got to ask yourself, how does a pimp from Luton find his way to somehow getting the administration of America, the presidency, to be pulling strings on their behalf? It invites a lot of questions.
It does, because you have to look back at, say, Trump's relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. And everybody, the MAGA crowd will say, but he told him to leave Mar-a-Lago. They all say that. No, he was hanging around with Jeffrey Epstein. There were links there. It showed, again, as these are reflections of his moral setting. Once again, intervening in the Romanian case, it's a really bad reflection on the Trump administration. Bringing Conor McGregor over on St. Patrick's Day, really bad reflection. Even though, there's an awful lot over here who were cheering it on, saying that was fantastic. And I'm looking at them going, are you serious? It's embarrassing. We're not stupid. The reason we stood up during the COVID scam was because it was a moral issue. And people seem to have lost sight of so much, right from wrong. And just because it's people saying things you want to hear on our side, let's say, that they've suddenly dropped all sense of any kind of ethics or moral code. I just find it absolutely shocking. But you'd have to wonder. But then it also brings in Candace Owens. There's an awful lot of theatrics going on here. And I just want to play a little video of Candace Owens' husband, George Farmer. Now, I've done a bit of work looking at the Bullingdon Club in Oxford. So the Bullingdon Club is still going. It's a rich boys club. It's a dining club. You have to be invited in. The dining suit is worth $3,500 just to get the suit. You have to be a rich boy, and you have to be a certain type of a rich boy. So like Boris Johnson was in it, David Cameron was in it. It's one of these ones, you're going places. Once you've been in this club, you are going places. You're going to be an influencer of perception in the public eye. Now, strangely enough, George Farmer was the president of this club, the Bullingdon Club, which was known for vandalism, known for vice. Like it's a bad club, all right? It's a hedonistic club. So we know that George Farmer's image, his public image, is conservatism, this English guy who's supposed to be a Christian. He studied theology at Oxford. This is also what Candace Owens is kind of pushing for, the family girl, and this phony, as far as I can see, phony conservatism. But let's just have a look at George Farmer in conversation.
That your wife, Candace Owens, did with Andrew Tate. I think, I might be wrong on this, I think that might be the first and only successful interview that Andrew Tate's ever had with a woman.
Right.
Is that right? Is Candace the first one?
this reporter you named, who I don't even know who she is, that's how insignificant she is.
Mm-hmm.
People like them can't stand the fact that when he says grab her by the we're like, so?
I literally couldn't have cared less about that.
So?
Like, this is like locker room talk.
Yeah,
Who cares?
I was like, what do you mean you don't care?
I know that the BBC tried one and it sort of blew up.
It didn't really work that well. Yeah.
But Candace gave him a long interview, and I think she was fair with him. Do you think Andrew was maybe a little softer or less on his guard because he was being interviewed by a woman, by Candace?
No, I didn't think so.
No?
I mean, I think that he was just as forceful and powerful as he ever is. I think he respects, I mean, look, I'm speaking for him here, and I'm certainly willing for him to correct me on this, but I definitely perceived it as a match kind of equals in some ways. Like, somebody who is very powerful in his own right, has got an incredible following, has built his own career, has built his own following. And Candace, as somebody who, again, built her own following, came from nothing, has got a similar life story in many ways to what he's kind of achieved. I think that the two of them saw each other as equals, and they were willing to discuss kind of that equality, or discuss topics as equals.
Right.
Whereas I think when the BBC sit down with him, BBC is a very left-wing organization which really has little to no credibility left in many ways. And
the thing is, we've all seen the BBC behave appallingly during the pandemic, and we know they've taken Bill Gates' dodgy money. We know we can't trust them, but there are times, this is because I spent so long in the mainstream media, there are times when they come good, let's say. If they're going after, say, somebody like Andrew Tate, that's when you see some of the journalistic skills that they should have used, say, during the COVID scam, come into action. But people, because they're so bamboozled and confused now because of the amount of lies, they can't really see that, actually, that was a good interview that the BBC did there. But you see, if we were just objectively moral, like instead of going person saying things that I agree with, so therefore I let them off the hook, if we could just be some kind of objectively moral, left, right, it doesn't really matter, and look at this case, it is most peculiar that the likes of George Farmer was hanging around with Andrew Tate. Like, the question of how do they know each other from way back when? Like, when did they get to know each other? And we can see Candace Owens is getting funny about it now and deflecting. Have you noticed that?
She uploaded a clip recently where she was saying how people are now saying that she's a pimp too with Andrew Tate, that she's pimping with Andrew Tate. And it's one of those things where it's like I think I've maybe been the most vocally critical of her and Andrew Tate, and put out the most content highlighting their relationship. I've never ever seen anyone say that Candace Owens is pimping with Andrew Tate. She's building these straw mans and these ridiculous premises that no one's actually saying, because I think the actual reality does invite a lot of questions that have not been answered. And it's this thing where you can talk about how the mainstream media has lost trust and they're biased and they've got cozy with the wrong people and taken money from places they shouldn't. But I mean, from what I've seen just covering Andrew Tate, the alternative media is 100 times worse at this point, is what I'm saying.
And that's the big issue, with all of this, is that they've brought in these very dark characters to represent us, right? People who dissented, people who spoke up and put our necks on the line. And they've brought in these very, very dark characters with terrible track records that anybody can verify. Anybody can go check if they want to, if they're that way inclined. And these people are supposed to be representing us. I mean, I was looking at Candace Owens' Brigitte Macron transvestigation, having lived in France for 5 years and know the terrain. There she was. She couldn't pronounce any of the names. She'd put forward this guy, Xavier Poussard, as this, extraordinary investigative journalist. Nobody had ever heard of him. The other one, nobody had ever heard of her. The independent, what was her name again? The one, there was only like a holiday picture of her. I can't remember her name right now. Anyway, I looked at that evidence. I looked at that transvestigation. That was a wild goose chase to nowhere. She concluded by saying she couldn't say if Brigitte Macron was her brother. All right. Now that's incredible. She bet her whole career on that. And yet people were so bamboozled by the blather and the spellbinding. Like, it was an incredible spellbinding exercise to see millions of people repeat that Brigitte Macron is a man. And it's still out there. It's all over the internet. And yet, Candace Owens, if you tune your ear in, Candace Owens concludes by saying she can't prove it. Now, remarkable. She has a remarkable power, really, when you consider just that alone, that she had the power to convince millions of people, and they're all repeating it now.
Yeah, I mean, the Andrew Tate stuff, it really does. That saying that a lie will get halfway around the world before truth has a chance to put on its pants. Yeah, 100%. That's exactly what I've learned from this. You know, with Andrew Tate, when they talk about their criminal cases, so evidence, you know, the status of victims, everything, even to the charges, they just blatantly lie. It's not, there's not like a subjective thing, you know, where they're like, oh, you know, from my perspective, this is what I saw. It's not that. It's black and white. It's black and white what you're charged with. There's no room for interpretation there. But they will just blatantly lie. They, you know, Tucker Carlson will be like, "You're not charged with rape," and Andrew Tate will say, "No, I'm not." He is, you know. But this is the thing. But still, people watch this, and they say, "Oh, Tucker did a great interview. That was great, Andrew Tate." You know, because people aren't really interested in the truth. You know, they're interested in feeding, you know, what makes them feel good. You know, we don't seek out the truth. We seek out things to validate our status quo. And it's like what you said with the BBC interview with I can't remember the journalist, Fiona, I think her name is. Continually, she was hammering him.
The case that's been put against me is completely and utterly fabricated, and I'm never going to be found guilty of anything. And it's very difficult for me to answer your in-depth questions because we're sitting here inside of the territory of Romania. I'm beholden to the Romanian legal system, and I'm not going to incriminate myself.
Let me read you then what you have said about what you have done.
Sure.
You have said, my job was to meet a girl, go on a few dates, sleep with her, get her to fall in love with me to the point where she'd do anything I say, and then get her on webcam so we could become rich together.
I don't think that's what I personally said. I think
that's exactly what you said on your website.
No, I've never said that. That's something that you found on the internet.
She was reading directly from his website, you know, where she was reading what he said he did to recruit and to pimp out these women. That fits in perfectly with human trafficking definition. She read that out and she said, he just lied. He said, no, that's not my website, you know.
And people can't take that because it comes from the BBC. So they go, I'm not going to listen to that. But if you could just say, but check it yourself, so verify it. If you're not going to take it from the BBC, well, go and check it. Is it true? I mean, that's all we ever need to ask. Is it true?
And that's, you know, that is the thing that it does give me hope, you know, because 2 years ago, posting about this stuff, you know, there was a lot of people that would rally around Andrew Tate, and there was a lot of people that were that had big platforms and a lot of influence on the right that would have him on and would defend him. And over time, just exposing who he is, mostly with his own words, that's stripped away. You know, now it's pretty much just fringe people left. And you even saw that, you know, with his America trip, what platforms he went on and who he had on. It was fringe people and people that he was friends with, people that he was close with. Nowadays, you know, he's pretty well losing in the court of public opinion. And that's an extremely powerful thing because he has over 10 million, you know, followers. He has, you know, like Elon Musk backs him, you know, Rumble backs him. As we said, Candace Owens, Tucker Carlson, the presidency, the office of the president back him. But yet, you know, a bunch of accounts that have just been exposing the truth have been able to combat that. And that just shows like the truth is powerful. It can get out there. and it can defeat something like propaganda that we've seen, and that's partly why that's mostly why he's suing us.
And the incredible part of the whole thing, then, this is where it gets really peculiar, is that Elon Musk has allowed that platform on X, even though he's endorsed these guys. It's all a reflection. It's showing how unsavory really they are. It's showing that these guys have really wonky ethics. But yet, if you didn't have X, would the message have got out there?
Yeah, this is the thing. X is it's advertised and supposed to be a free speech platform. That's a good thing to have. And I definitely felt that throughout the pandemic. I lost accounts on X for posting videos that shouldn't have happened. I think most people now would look at them and say, like, you should have lost your account for that. It's a free speech platform. Andrew Tate should be able to have a voice on that platform. But when they introduced ad revenue on X, they handpicked just a few influencers. And Andrew Tate was one of that handful of influencers. And that was a month after he was indicted for human trafficking, rape, and organized crime. He was given over $20,000 paycheck. And it was him, just a few other influencers were given the privilege of being able to earn ad revenue on X.
She's 12.
That's selectively giving him more than everyone else, and that doesn't sit right with me at all.
Yeah, this is the issue with him, isn't it? I mean, this is the fact that he keeps getting stuffed into our faces. We can't ignore him. And then we see the likes of, say, the Irish government. We've got the Taoiseach of Simon Harris. He went right up against Simon Harris, called him a weak man. So then it gives them all this leverage. It gives them the leverage to push the likes of Netflix propaganda, adolescents, and then the people who do follow him and defend him, which seem to be all over X too. And you'd really start to question these people, because for me, this big surprise coming out of the COVID scam, where we kind of had this sense of camaraderie, and now it's becoming clear through something like Andrew Tate, people supporting Andrew Tate, or people supporting Conor McGregor, or people repeating Candace Owens nonsense. And then you start to go, oh my God, I thought we had more in common, but it turns out we don't. And it's more fractured than ever. But for me, it's always just been a moral issue, the whole thing. You've got to give people the fact that it was a scamdemic in the first place, we have all of that to deal with. You'd wonder, is this just a cover? Is this just some kind of theatre cover so that we're not really looking at the body count?
I don't know. I mean, I don't think I can go as far as you to say it was a scam. I think the pandemic proved to me that I'm definitely not a conspiracy theorist. And I've actually pulled back a lot from directions that I've headed. And I feel like I'm someone that firmly requires facts and a stable ground of knowledge in an area before I can make certain leaps. I feel like before I confidently speak on something, I feel like I actually need to have a good body of knowledge on it. That's where it's like, I think Andrew Tate absolutely exploits people who've, and that is the thing. It's like he still uses like COVID vaccines and these things as examples because he knows that he can manipulate people. And, that's where, because it always moves different things, like what the Matrix is that's attacking him. It's whatever is in vogue now. You know what I mean? It's never consistent. It's because after October 7th, he then jumped on the Free Palestine bandwagon. So then it was because he was speaking out against Israel. It was just recently because of the whole US AID funding, because that was then in vogue. So then it was like, oh, there you go. US aid was being pushed into Romania to persecute me, and then it's like Soros and this and that, It's never consistent. It's never one thing, and you can never actually find anything of substance. It's been an interesting evolution for me to try and figure out where I stand with these things. And Andrew Tate, in many ways, has highlighted, I think, some of the things that I've found troubling, especially in the freedom movement, but even more so now in alternative media.
Oh, yeah. I mean, this is the whole thing, the alternative media. And I know David Icke has been pointing this out. He has been saying, you can't trust these guys. Because really, I mean, don't know about you, but there's no money to be made in pointing these things out. If anything, there's no money. You get,
there's not money in there is no money really in being someone of integrity who's just trying to tell the truth. That doesn't make money. You foster a crowd. That's what you do. And then you just feed that crowd what they want to hear. That's how you make money.
Yeah. So when you see these big accounts and they are making money out of it, you just, and we saw what happened as well. We saw that they, it wasn't the people who were speaking out at the time that they brought forward and said, well done, you showed courage there and bravery. You stood up against the machine. No, it wasn't those people who got elevated after the fact. It was people who, watch their words, like Russell Brand. I was monitoring Russell Brand. He was really watching his words. He was playing the two, he was like, oh, I wonder what's going on. And now again, Russell Brand is another type of character where he is jumped on the truth bandwagon and is using, I think, this is my opinion, he's using it as a shield. Now he's found God and everything's found Jesus. And so many Christians are like, well, what's the quote again? He without sin cast the first stone, so all this kind of these biblical references can be used now to say, we've got to let poor old Russ off the hook. It's only because he's saying true stuff that the big bad machine's coming after him.
Yeah. I mean, doesn't that say everything really? I mean, you can never actually pinpoint what is it that they're targeting them for saying specifically, like Russell Brand, Andrew Tate. What is it for? For inspiring a generation of men? That's why they're targeting. Oh, but they didn't target Jordan Peterson, who's far more credible and did a far better job. There really is only a few people that you can say that they were actually persecuted for telling the truth. The idea that somehow you can group an Andrew Tate in with a Julian Assange or a Edward Snowden is just you have no credibility to me if you say that.
And a lot of people, we just don't know them. You see a lot of people who aren't allowed to speak, they're gone. They're gone ages ago, and they are censored and they've been taken out. Like the fact is we have the Tates with their hand signals. We've Candace Owens with her hand signals. They're all making hand signals and they all seem to be part of the same club where they create this kind of Punch and Judy show.
Well, I mean,
entertained.
Andrew Tate, he didn't even start speaking about the Matrix and being attacked by the Matrix until mid 2022. And that's because one of his accomplices is an ex-Romanian police officer. And so what happened was after he was raided in April 2022, she then illegally was able to access Romanian police databases to be able to keep tabs on what was going on with the investigation into them. So that's what it was. They were able to look and see, okay, this is what's going on. There's an investigation. It's highly likely, based on what they're probably going to find, that we're going to get arrested. So that's when they started speaking out, saying, "Oh, we're telling the truth. They're going to get us."
Do you remember? I'm trying to, because you've actually looked at it so clearly now, so you might know. When did Andrew Tate tell people don't touch the vaccine? Was it after everybody had rolled up their sleeve, or did he say it beforehand?
It's always after. I had people who were saying that they were pretty sure that he got vaccinated. It's the same thing where I am fairly sure. I don't want to stake everything on it, but I'm pretty sure he was even selling masks at one stage. I've seen that. I don't know if that's fake or not, but he definitely wore masks. He definitely wasn't someone who was like, I'm not kneeling to any of this. He always jumps on bandwagons. It's all he does. Anything that happens, he'll jump on it and exploit it.
So, I mean, it's very peculiar now that we saw him head off on the private jet to the States. I don't know who was paying for that. And then we saw him head off to Dubai. Is he still in Dubai? And then he was doing all the hand signals with some Arabs over there. I mean, who is his network? And there are way more questions. Where are the girls? Is this some kind of Epstein network? Is there more to the story than just, say, the OnlyFans cover? Is that a little cover? I mean, it's enough in itself because, again, these predatory tactics of going after young girls and pretending you're in love with them. And as he says, like using sex to hook them in and then beating them, physically actually beating them, taking all their money and avoiding tax as well. So this guy couldn't be any more in our faces. And it's all self-incriminating. He's said all this online, and somehow you're getting sued for defaming him when he's defamed himself.
Yeah, there's a lot of really interesting questions and theories about his operation, whether it was a money laundering operation, all sorts of things like that. Yeah, you're also interested in that George Farmer connection, as I am, because I think that's really interesting. That thing of how does a Luton drug dealer and pimp fall into the same circles with someone like George Farmer? You got the Tommy Robinson connection because they're both from Luton, so that kind of makes sense that Tommy Robinson, with UKIP, he's in the right wing political sphere. He knows Nigel Farage, a lot of those kind of people, that he would then introduce his buddy Andrew Tate, and then Andrew Tate would do his thing and network. But it is that thing of just like, well, what function does Andrew Tate serve with these people? This pimp, this kickboxing pimp. Why would they embrace him? What's he doing there? And the fact that Candace Owens has disclosed that her husband was friends with Andrew Tate and still is. They got a photo of each other, like in the she does her crazy videos, doing her rants against Israel. In the background, there's a photo of her husband with Andrew Tate. And yeah, he said that he goes way back with Andrew Tate before he was Andrew Tate. And he's never actually explained, like, how did you meet? What's that friendship based on? That really does interest me.
Oh, it's so fun. I mean, the way that she's sidestepping it now, this is because, you're just going to start monitoring her behavior on this. She's deflecting. She's saying they're all picking on me because I'm pregnant. And, why are you all being so mean? It's like, why not just answer the question? If you're able to dish it out as a journalist, you've got to be able to be cross-examined. Everybody should. I mean, any of us, you, me, if somebody's asking us questions, we should be able to handle it, especially if you put yourself out there in the public domain. And the fact that she starts getting so funny and deflecting, she's deflecting right, left, and center. And also another one to hop on bandwagons, to tell people what they want to hear. So they go, but she's on our side. She's one of us. So leave her alone. And she's incredibly effective in how she does it. But there's been so many lies now. It's going to rot. It's going to start falling in on itself because there's no proper foundation built for her operation. I just can't, unless people continue to be okay with all this lying.
Well, I mean, she did something that that is maybe the worst thing I've ever seen a broadcaster do, and it's something that no one in mainstream media could ever get away with. And that's that she flew to interview Andrew Tate. And to take a bit of credit, that was because after my first video went so viral, even everyone on Daily Wire was coming out hard against Andrew Tate. And she instead flew the next week to interview him, to try and do a puff piece, to try and do this thing of like, oh, you're from Luton, no one can understand what that's like, how dare they judge you, you're just like Jay-Z dealt drugs, and then like Tucker, she lied about the charges and the evidence, and but I think she got enough blowback from that then she dedicated an episode after that entirely to attempting to discredit one of Andrew Tate's alleged victims. Now in that, Andrew Tate is suing this alleged victim and he's suing them because she testified to the Romanian authorities. That's it. He's only just because she testified, and so he's made this lawsuit against her to try and get all this dirt and to dox her as well. And then so Candace Owens did this entire episode where her entire foundation of information against this alleged victim was based on Andrew Tate's lawsuit. So it was all bullshit. And in it, she talks about this alleged victim's past. And in the past, 5 grown men had sexual relationships with her when she was a minor. All of them minimum age of 35. And one of them was in his 50s. And he was convicted of child molestation, of molesting her and another child as well. So this went through the courts. He was found guilty. And now he's in prison and serving a sentence that's over 20 years long. And she defended all of these men and said that it was this alleged victim's fault.
Who is Emma Gabby? First, I'll tell you who she is, according to the Tate brothers, who is suing her in Palm Beach County, Florida.
According to the Tate brothers, we're going to tell you who a human trafficking victim is by the 2 guys who have been charged with human trafficking this victim in Romania. So they're going to tell you who this victim is.
According to them, again, if you want to take their word for it.
We don't want to take their word for it. As we've already seen in previous videos that you've made, Milk Bar, Tate is a compulsive liar.
Emma Gabby is a predator who has a long history of baiting men into sexual relationships for the specific purpose of destroying their lives. She has a chain of victims going back several years to when she was a minor.
Oh, she said it. She was a minor. These are not guys who were 20 years old or 22 years old. These men are all into their mid-30s and above. Keith Fox was 57. Emma was 15. Dustin Milner was 35 years old. Emma was 17. Tyler Hensel was 35 years old. Emma was 17. Marlon Fisher was 34 years old. Emma was just 1 month out of her 16th birthday. She was 17. Joel Friedman was 39 years old. Emma was 17. So what we have here is a group of child predators, guys who are preying on young girls, saying, oh, woe is me, I was set up by this minor.
That she was the one, she was the real predator. And what she did, even with this convicted child molester, she knew that if anyone actually looked up that case, then that entire premise that it was her fault, the alleged victims, would fall apart. So she then beeped the child molester's name to hide it, so people wouldn't look it up. So she beat the child molester's name, but then she said the minor's name who was molested over 100 times in that episode. No one is able to actually rationalize that or give a reasonable explanation why she would do that. It's disgusting. It's horrible. She literally protected a convicted child molester.
Yeah,
no one.
It's evil.
It's evil. She's a despicable human being.
She is. And I mean, I know in Ireland now, most people on this side of the fence, let's say, which is there's quite a room for us on this side of the fence to have lots of different opinions. But I would say most people have fallen for the Candace Owens thing, which I find it really upsetting, you know, when you show, because like what you do, you isolate the clips. And I must say, having editing skills is probably one of the best things you can have right now in order to show people, look, what do you think? Like, what do you think? Because this always has to come back on the audience. This isn't about having false prophets. This is about how is the audience reacting to this? And I have been bitterly disappointed to see how the audience has reacted, thinking that we've come so far, you know, collectively. And then to come down on this hurdle where you're literally going, but look, like, are you really okay with this? And that's why I salute you, because you have been very clear in all that you have done, these montages that you've done. You know, you haven't done crafty editing. It's not like you're putting one piece together and sticking another piece and, you know, trying to shove some kind of narrative in their faces. No, you've simply held up a mirror. That's what you've done. And then it's back on the audience to respond appropriately. And if they don't, it really is a matter of, well, what's your moral problem here? You know, this is a flood 'em again kind of situation when the people show, they prove that they don't have the moral gumption, the ethics, the backbone to say, no, that's wrong. She was a child. She was only a child. She was being manipulated. She was being groomed by these men who had no right to go near her and use the girl like that and boast about it and brag about it. And instead, you see Candace Owens, who's pretending that she's a conservative and a Christian. You see her pick on the victim. And I saw that there was some kind of butt plug thing, whatever they had done to the poor girl. And the victims, like say Bree Stern now, we see Bree Stern and she's totally plastic surgeryed up, and she is sold out. See, a lot of, like, she's an adult, different story. Okay, so she's an adult. She thought that Andrew Tate was her boyfriend, which is a bit stupid for an adult considering, just Google him. But anyway, so she'd gone along. Now, anyway, it's ended up really badly for her in that he's being very abusive towards her. But at least with Bree Stern, she's come back and she's telling us about it. She's validating what we already know. But people will look at Bree Stern and say, no. Again, it'll kind of fall on her being unsavory rather than...
It kind of blew my mind, the response to that. Because you're right. Like, she went to the police. She filed a police report, and she's speaking out, and she should get credit for that.
Yeah.
And well, I think people's response was, so many people were like, "Why were you with Andrew Tate? I mean, you must have known that this was going to happen." And that's such an interesting response to me, because at the same time, I hear so many people who support him say innocent till proven guilty. So you somehow simultaneously have people saying innocent until proven guilty, but yet then when she decides to be with him, it's like, you should have known better. The evidence is clear. So that's interesting to me. And I think that speaks to now like I was saying, the public perception with Andrew Tate, that I think people are much more now aware of who he is. And I think if it was just her in a vacuum and there wasn't all these other investigations, and the hours of videos that we've seen, and you played some of them, then yeah, I think she could be discredited. But I think it's the fact that she's giving testimony that's identical to at least 7 other women that spans over a decade across 3 countries, with women that have never met each other, that are all saying the same thing. They're all saying, he raped me and he choked me. And at that point, it's like, well, that's hard to discredit.
Yeah, it's hard to discredit. Where is it all going, though? Because it seems to have tarnished the message completely. It's tarnished. So it's given legitimacy to this right-wing thing, all right? So it's like the far right. We've got the far right. And initially, everybody's like, what are you talking about, the far right? Now it turns out we kind of do have a far right. And yeah, Andrew Tate and Conor McGregor. And who else? There's a few others, like even Candace Owens. Yeah, they are.
The Groypers, the Nick Fuentes, the guy,
Yeah, Nick Fuentes, like, he was quite hilarious, really. I only kind of started listening to him the other night, and I was like, this guy is so funny. Like, he's so talented, great broadcaster. And then, he starts saying stuff, and you're like, oh, how disappointing that such talent and charisma is being wasted on this, like, Tate pushing stuff, hating women. Women shouldn't have the vote. Keep them in their place. And it's just so sad. But the sad bit is that he's got the following, because he's funny. A lot of these guys are very talented. Like, Tate has got a good brain. Candace Owens got a great brain. She's just manipulative, and she's like Tate, using it for the wrong reason. And I'd say probably for the wrong God, with a small G. And Nick Fuentes, another one, hugely entertaining, but so bitterly disappointing. And I must say, they don't represent me. But that leaves the far right, the so-called far right, kind of leaderless in a sense, and kind of cut off and very much isolated. Anybody who's taking a moral stand again, and we're fewer and fewer, I think, going, these people don't represent me. This isn't what I'm about. I don't want Conor McGregor as the president of Ireland. I would never support a bruv party in the UK if I lived there. I don't support Trump. I didn't support Biden either. Like, none of this is representing. You're kind of left in a very strange place, because it's like, well, I'm on no team now.
Yeah, I mean, I'm on no team. You know, I mean, continually you'll get disappointed if you try and embrace, especially influencers. You know, influencers especially. I'm not sure. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know where the silver lining is with something like this. Everything's upside down. You know, it really feels like I'm not saying that it's Trump's fault because it's as much the response to Trump, but you know, like Andrew Breitbart was the one who said politics was downstream from culture, and now it feels like it's the other way around. Now it feels like that politics informs everything, and you know, we saw that just the past few years, pretty much ever since Trump was elected. Just everything's political, everything's ideological, and yeah, I was just watching a clip with like Kirk Douglas on Dick Cavett show from like the 70s, and he was asked about an interview that John Wayne gave to Playboy talking about American Indians, and Kirk Douglas was just like, I don't really see eye to eye with like John Wayne with anything, but he's a great actor. I love the guy. He's a friend, and I love making movies with him. It's like I miss that.
Yeah,
that doesn't exist
I know.
now.
When things are just simple.
Yeah.
But since you've really taken on the Tates and they have this kind of tough guy persona, I mean, have you ever felt intimidated? Have you ever felt that your safety was somehow compromised?
Yeah, we took precautions early on, but no, I mean nothing's eventuated. You get death threats and things like that, but nothing serious. But I got a family, so it's just about trying to be cautious. But no, I mean I've been featured in his other lawsuits. He's kind of dropped my name and things. But then it was this lawsuit where it's like, all right, clearly I'm a threat and other people are a threat. So he needs to act on it. I don't think he'd be stupid enough to do something. But
no, he doesn't want to make you too famous either, because everybody will start looking at the clips.
Yeah, that's part of it. But he's done it. I think in some way, I think in some ways, I am protected by being out in the open. Whereas anonymous accounts, there is that threat that that he can expose them, which is definitely a motivation for him. And especially with some of those, there's at least one big one that he's really gunning for.
What do you mean, one big one?
One big account, yeah. Crayon's Murders is firmly. I mean, Crayon's Murders has done, even more better work than me. I mean, because he's the person who's really been. I'm a filmmaker, so I look at the footage of Andrew Tate and share that, whereas Crayons is the one who's actually sharing court documents and really getting the truth of the cases out there. And I think that really is a massive threat to them.
Yeah, because I can't tell you how helpful it's been. Because I couldn't find any of the clips. Like the internet's been cleaned up, so I don't know where you found all the clips.
They did that themselves. It's ironic that they put all this stuff out there, and now they're having to try and try and delete it.
How did you find all those clips? Like, because they're gone. Like, if you go Google any of that, like that's all gone, unless
they circulated all of it. They pumped out like these marketing packages to their students in the pyramid schemes that they have. They pump this stuff out there for them to share, it went so viral that it's left a digital footprint that is out there, that people still upload it. Every now and again someone will pop up some old interview and will be like, oh, I haven't seen that before, I better quickly download it before it's scrubbed. And
do you think that was done on purpose? Like the fact that he had put it all out there. Like, are we being played with Andrew Tate? Is he just a character, or is he for real? Is he really doing all this stuff?
In many ways, I think the worst thing he did was try and become legitimate and to try and embrace more of that mainstream alternative media audience. I think if he had stuck with his pimp persona, he'd probably be better off now because he'd have less to lose. But he's attempted to, to lie and say that he stopped doing it years ago and pretend to be something that he's not. And in some ways, I think that was a mistake because he has to uphold this image that's just not true. Whereas if he was just the same pimp that he was always, then I don't know. I mean, it's interesting how he's had to launder his image.
Oh, it's so interesting because, I mean, again, you go back to George Farmer, the questions, I mean, it's not going to go away. It's out there now because George Farmer said, we go way back. He said it himself. And we all went, oh, you go way back, do you? And then there's that photograph up on the wall in Romania. And then
But
there's
it's also like even Candace Owens, within the first 2 weeks of being introduced and meeting George Farmer at a Turning Point event in the UK, George Farmer introduced her to Andrew Tate at this hotel where there's this famous photo of Andrew Tate with Candace Owens and Paul Joseph Watson, and she talks about that. So this is late 2019, I think, and she says that she was talking with George Farmer the entire evening. Meanwhile, she had a Romanian assistant at the time, and this Romanian assistant was talking with Andrew Tate. And the Romanian assistant immediately warned Candace Owens, saying, "This guy's a pimp. I'm from Romania. I know what a pimp is. This guy lives in Romania and he's a pimp." And so even back then, Candace Owens was warned, Andrew Tate is a pimp. And yet, she has no choice but to defend him because her husband is connected in some way.
I mean, she's defending Harvey Weinstein now. I mean, this is her thing because she is so good at it. She is such a spellbinder. She can convince anybody. She could sell snow to the Eskimos. She's got it. Like, as long as the audience are allowing themselves to be spellbound. So right back on the audience again. Now, I said I wouldn't keep you for longer than an hour. We've gone over the hour. I love this conversation. It's so, so interesting. Just want to thank you for everything that you have done and for putting your head on the block. It's true journalism. What you have done you have just shown the people, and it's up to the people if they want to go along with it. So brilliant work, and I hope to stay in touch. And the best of luck now with this case as well with Andrew Tate.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we'll see how it goes.
It'll be great. Well, it will be great because it's good. I mean, really and truly, we got to get it out there. So now it's all up on the surface.
Yeah, I'm not going to stop speaking and making videos. It's not going to scare me off. It's only going to embolden me.
Brilliant. That's the spirit. Okay, great chatting to you, and thank you so much. We'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks for having me.